In this new series, we've been talking about productivity and how it links up to God, that God is requiring from us to be productive. Many people have a misconception that they are going to be productive to the degree that they are holy, to the degree that they are righteous. And so they go about being holy and being righteous, and then they check out their lives of productivity and they find that there is nothing to write home about. And there is that push and pull. See, there is a balance that is needed in both extremes. We need to be holy, we need to be righteous, even as God is holy. But then we also need to be productive at the end of the day. And I say that God expects us to be productive. The very first command that was given to a man was to be fruitful. That means to be productive. It has never changed. It has never been replaced. It is the same call. So today we're looking at some of the pillars of productivity. Even as we go deeper into this series, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Life Signatures episodes are brought to you by AfricanBooks.com, which is an online ebook platform that seeks to broadcast the African Christian voice to the world. As such, they have become a hub for African content, connecting African writers and publishers with a global reading audience. Publishing your books on their site is free and easy, with authors having full control over their content and the price they choose to sell at it. I was personally blown away by the concept that AfricanBooks.com is coming up with. Things like no content from their site or their app is going to be run on laptops so that people can easily copy. In other words, your content as a writer is restricted from digital multiplication or digital copying, so you remain intact with your information. And the other concept that I got so blown away with was the fact that in some time to come, in due course, AfricanBooks.com will be starting to announce African Writer of the Year. In other words, there will be competitions in all African countries to figure out who is the best published author. And I also fell in love with the fact that countries can actually compete against each other. We can have African authors going at it after each other, and your book as an author will be reviewed and have some stars and recommended upon that particular platform. The thing is that it's an answer to Amazon.com. You know, with Amazon, what happens? You've got to have an account in the Americas or whatever, or in Europe before you can get paid as an author. But here, the local currency is in play and the local means of getting paid are in play. So to get started, go to AfricanBooks.com as an author or as a publisher, and even as a reader if you wanted to read your African favorite authors. Enjoy. Well, in the episode yesterday, we already firmed up and say that productivity is one of those things that God expects from us. Actually, not just expect, but also commands us. And God is so, for lack of a better word, maybe vicious as far as lackadaisical approach to life is concerned. As far as productivity is concerned, God is expecting us to be productive. We've been using the parable of the talent. You remember the 3 guys, one was given 5 talents. And by the way, talents is not gifts and talents. It's not like a talent to play football, a talent to draw, a talent to speak. No, talents in that story were actually money. It was a hefty sum of money that they were talking about. One was given 5, one was given 2, one was given 1 talent. And even that 1 talent was, in today's currency, thousands of dollars. And they were supposed to do something about these things. They were supposed to be productive with the talents that they were given, and they were not. And at the end of the day, one guy was not. At the end of the day, the guy who was not productive was called wicked. This is God calling someone wicked, not someone who has committed adultery. Of course, that's also wickedness. But in this case, he's not talking about adultery. In this story, he's not talking about incest. He's not talking about murder. He's not talking about robbery. He's not talking about lying and all that stuff. He's talking about productivity. And he calls the man wicked, the man who was not productive in any list. So we started saying that if that is the case, if that is important for God, then we need to look at the pillars of productivity. And yesterday, the first pillar we talked about was, of course, the pillar of purpose. That purpose gives us the direction that we need to take, and when we take that direction of being productive, because productivity at the end of the day is about effectiveness. You can do all the things that you want to do, but if they are not grounded in purpose, then you're not being effective. You can paint the ground, for example. Is that being effective? That's work, yeah. But is that being effective? No, it's not. So purpose begins to give us the dimension of productivity. It is the first pillar of productivity. Today, let us talk about 2 pillars of productivity. The first one I'm going to talk about is leadership. Leadership, you know what it is. Great leadership is always about delivering great productivity. There is no other measure of true leadership other than productivity. There are very many definitions of leadership and beautiful definitions of leadership. Some people say leadership is movement. John C. Maxwell says that if you are leading and no one is following, you're only taking a walk in the park. Leadership, he says, is about influence. When you talk about leadership, it's a verb. The things that leadership produces, they are active things. The end result of leadership is productivity. If what you are doing as a leader doesn't produce nothing, you are not a leader. I don't care how many titles they give you. I don't care how many clouds and how many aid camps they give you. I don't care how many soldiers you have, backing you up. If there is no productivity as a leader, you have failed. So the second biggest pillar of leadership is productivity. The second biggest pillar of productivity is leadership. Leadership produces. Period. You can take that to the bank. If there is a leadership that doesn't produce, listen to me, that leadership is not leadership at all. It is something else. You can call it something else. And of course, there are very many examples of great leaders and also very many examples of bad leaders. And let me tell you this. When we talk about productivity, we're talking about positive productivity. When I say that leadership produces, when you, for example, expel people from the country, a whole tribe from your country, you're not being productive. You're not being productive at the end of the day. That is not leadership. The second biggest pillar of productivity is leadership, because it influences, it guides, it moves, it produces. There is fruits of leadership, and that fruit of leadership is productivity. So great leadership always delivers great productivity. It is so hard to find sustained productivity governed by pathetic leadership. You know that. Look around in your family, look around in your community, your school, look around in your country. There will be no sustained leadership, there will be no sustained productivity if there is no good governance, if there is no good leadership. The other day I just attended the Corporate Governance Awards in Uganda, and they were talking about a lot of things about leadership and corporate governance. And let me tell you this, If there is no good corporate governance, it means there is pathetic leadership. And if there is pathetic leadership, there is pathetic corporate governance, there is no productivity, at least to the degree that it's needed, the degree that it's required. So the second biggest pillar of productivity, if you're going to be productive, you look at your leadership. Whom are you following? And by the way, the basic level of leadership is the self-leadership. You might be saying, oh, but me, I don't have a leader. You are your own leader. How do you wake up? What time do you wake up? How do you produce in your mind? Is your mind being cultivated for productivity? Is your body being cultivated for productivity? Are you discipling yourself and leading yourself to leadership, to productivity? That is the basic. By the way, the greatest leaders you've ever seen sometimes have been the greatest self-leaders. And the ones who have failed, for the most part, have been those ones who have failed in themselves as leaders. Failing in self-leadership fails you in leadership in general, and there is no productivity with failed leadership. The second pillar of productivity that I'm going to talk about today, and we'll call it a day, and then tomorrow we will do two more, is planning. Planning is going a step ahead of what you're supposed to do before you get started. It's like what they call dry running. When we were doing programming back in campus, okay, I did not go to campus, I went to college. I went to a tertiary institution, and so I did not get a degree. But when we were doing programming, there's something that we used to call dry running. In other words, before you write the code, the software that is going to create things, make things happen and produce a service or something, you've got to envision it and go through it. See, it's going to go from one point to another point, to another point, to another point. This decision is going to be made here. If this decision is no, then we do this. If this decision yes, then we do this. If there is no decision, then we do this. And so on and so forth. That's the dry run. Planning is something that we miss a lot in the world today. Very many of us fail in being productive because we don't plan. We are like monkeys waking up in the morning with no agenda. We are like, in fact, bees are better than us. We're like the lion who just, slithers, and the snake is the one that slithers. The lion is just slumbers and only woken up to task when he's gotta feed the tribe or when he's hungry. If we don't have a plan, to plan ahead for the week, plan ahead for the month, plan ahead for the year, we will not be productive to the degree that we're supposed to be productive. We have a lot of potential inside of us, and that potential is never tapped because we are not planners. It goes a step ahead of identifying the purpose and vision of productivity. That is what planning, it starts chunking down your purpose, start chunking down your vision, start chunking down your mission into workable plans, into workable blueprints. This is how it's going to look like. This is how I want it to do. By this time, this is what I need for it. That is planning. These are the people that can be able to work and help me with it. That's planning. If anything, it is one of the greatest pillars of productivity. If you find instances where productivity is wanting, for the most part, it is going to be lack of planning. It is going to be that someone has failed to plan. They normally say that failure to plan is planning to fail. So the second biggest ingredient or pillar for productivity, ladies and gentlemen, is planning. The guys who are planners, and of course we're going to talk about other things because planning is not the only thing. You cannot tell me that I have a vision and I'm a big planner, therefore I'm a very productive person. No. Planning is one of the pillars of productivity, without which either there is failed productivity or there is minimal productivity to the not so required results. Tomorrow we will continue talking about this. Remember, the topic we're covering is why productivity is the greatest qualifier in God's kingdom. Why God values productivity. And we're breaking down productivity into its constituent pillars. Until tomorrow when we do two more. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.